in Washington. Good evening to you, Simon. Thanks very much for joining us. Is there any sign that COVID-19 is levelling off in certain hotspot areas?
Well, there is that sign, certainly in New York, Sally, and within the last half an hour or so, the governor of New York, Andrew Cuomo, at his daily press briefing, has said that based on the latest statistics there, he believes the worst is now over. Now, to put that into perspective, he was speaking on a day when 671 people died in New York over a 24-hour period, but that is far and away the lowest number that New York has seen in a single 24-hour period for many, many days. We got so used to seeing numbers of 700, 800, 900 people dying in a single 24-hour period in New York State. So Governor Cuomo saying, at least in New York, the worst may be over. He says it's much too early for everybody to relax and to think that they can go back to normal. This is going to have to be a sort of a phased reopening of the economy. But on this day at least, he is saying New Yorkers should celebrate the fact that as a result of having observed lockdowns, they appear successfully to have slowed the curve there.
As you say, astonishing that a good day is seen as 671 deaths compared to what New York State has been through. Of course, as we're seeing those areas get a bit of a handle, other areas are still waiting perhaps to reach their peak. So this desperation on the part of Donald Trump to reopen the economy, hopefully by May, surely is an impossible thing to guess at.
Well, look, there's not a public health official on his coronavirus task force or off it saying that you can simply reopen the country in May. I mean, it was notable yesterday, the Sunday television talk shows here. They, of course, had a plethora of different scientists and medical experts appearing, and every single one of them said that it would be much too early to reopen things in May, that you would be risking a spike, a second wave of infections. And remember that in some towns and cities, the first wave isn't over yet. It's not over in New Orleans, it's not over in Detroit. There are now enormous concerns about Baltimore, just north of us here in Washington, D.C., with an enormous African-American population. We know that that population disproportionately dies of coronavirus when compared to other populations because of its economic realities and the situations in which people find themselves. So this idea that you can simply, as Dr. Anthony Fauci, the director of the National Institutes of Health, has said, you can simply flick on a light switch and say to everybody, right, back to work. It is not going to happen like that. And Governor Cuomo was saying today, some areas where there are low rates of infection, well, maybe you can begin to ease off the restrictions. But in places like New York, you've got to keep them on.
Absolutely. Speaking of Dr. Anthony Fauci, Donald Trump wouldn't be Donald Trump if he wasn't tweeting. And in this case, he has retweeted a message which called for Dr. Fauci to be fired because Fauci said the US could have acted sooner. Do you think that it is even feasible that he would consider firing someone as pivotal in managing this disease as Dr. Fauci at this time?
Well, if we were living during any other presidency, Sally, I would say the answer is no. Of course he can't fire Dr. Fauci, but we're not living through another presidency. We're living through Donald Trump's. And personal loyalty and respect is deeply, deeply important to him. And the problem that he's got with Dr. Fauci is Dr. Fauci is a scientist. He deals with facts, incontrovertible facts. And so when he was asked on television yesterday, had the United States left it too late to introduce a lockdown, had it cost lives by its failure to engage in mitigation strategies earlier, he told the truth, and he said, yes, that was absolutely the case, that the United States should have acted earlier when public health officials like himself were saying to Donald Trump inside the White House, this is going to be a huge problem. That kind of behavior was always going potentially to trip up the relationship with Dr. Fauci. Now, at the White House on Friday, President Trump insisted he always listens to Dr. Fauci. He respects him and the other members of the coronavirus task force with medical backgrounds. But that retweet of the Fire Fauci message certainly suggests there might be a little trouble in paradise.
Yes, indeed. Thank you so much. That's our correspondent in Washington, Simon Marks.